It is time to talk about Pixie. This is a series where I discuss characters from Marvel Comics who are making their debut in Marvel Snap. I talk about them mostly in the context of just what their deal is in the comics, so people that are playing Snap or people that just enjoy learning about comic characters, maybe want to get a little bit of information on these guys before you start reading yourself, can know who they are. Gwynn is a very interesting character who's been up to a lot in her about 20 years of publication. She shows up first in New X-Men Academy X #5, which was written by Nunzio De Filippis and Christina Weir, with art by Michael Ryan, Rick Ketchum with Avalon, David Sharp, and Pete Pantasis. For a character who's only been around for 20 years, Magan has gone through a lot. And I will say right off the bat, I know her name reads Megan Gwynn. She is Welsh. Apparently, the proper way to pronounce that name in Welsh is Magan, which is good because there's already a Megan in X-Men, the one from Excalibur, who also deals very much with magic. So it's like very easy to confuse those characters. So that's why you got to call her Magan. Anyway, Magan first shows up in the Academy X days. This is early 2000s, right before the decimation, right before Scarlet Witch says no more mutants and almost everyone loses their powers. She is not a main player in this series, at least not for a while. She's just a background character. She's a little pink girl who has a helmet on, who can fly. She uses her wings to fly, but she has a helmet because she's not very good at it. That's kind of her deal. She's nice, you know, doesn't really cause problems, seems very innocent, seems very young compared to the other members of the team. She's a member of the Paragons, which means she's on Wolfsbane's team, which if you know the comic, when Wolfsbane is inevitably fired, she trains under Amara. But again, this is all stuff that, like, she's not one of the main two groups. She's either not a Hellion or a New Mutant, so we don't see too much of her. I'd say the most significant thing she did in the comics involves another character who I'm a big fan of, who a lot of X-Men are a big fan of, Illyana Rasputin, Magic. And again, as far as we knew in the early 2000s, this character could fly, and she also had some sort of pixie dust power, which I don't think we totally got a sense for what that was until a little bit later. Basically, her pixie dust creates illusions. I don't believe she gets to decide what the illusions are. I think you just kind of see them and hallucinate for a little bit. It's a handy defensive power to have. And if you're like, hey, isn't there an X-Man who does illusions? It's like, yeah, there is an X-Men villain that does illusions named Mastermind, Jason Wingard. And spoiler alert, that's her dad. So she's related to him. There's no really explicit scientific reason why, like, if you have a dad who has laser beams, you have laser beams now. But it just turns out that a lot of the time when X-Men and, you know, ex-villains and mutants have kids, their kids tend to have some version of their power. So like Mastermind can create illusions, can trick you into thinking you're doing something you're not. Remember the Hellfire Club, he's very important in the Dark Phoenix saga. And he has two daughters besides Magan who are bad guys also. And Magan, she has these pretty purple pixie wings that you can use to make this pixie dust that causes you to hallucinate. Usually, like, I feel like nice things like unicorns and, you know, rainbows and stuff, but it's, I don't know. Honestly, don't remember how her powers work. Well, one thing that's important about Pixie, she does not use that power very much, the hallucination power. I'll explain. So she gets dragged to hell by, well, okay, not hell. She gets dragged to Limbo, which is a hell-like place where Illyana Rasputin, Magic, was trapped by the demon Belasco. He was turned into the Dark Child. He took parts of her soul out, made her soul sword, and used her for all kinds of stuff. It turned her into this little evil devil creature. Part of the way that your soul works in Marvel Comics is that if it gets taken out of you, you become evil, because like evil magic takes up the space that was in your soul. Demons want your soul because they can use it to make weapons. So like you make a soul sword. It's a complicated story, but a bunch of the X-Men got taken down to Limbo, this dimension that Belasco is at least somewhat in charge of. It kind of changes, but I think at that time he was in charge of it. And Magic, the Dark Child at the time, protects the X-Men, but she's like, listen, I need one of you to give me a piece of your soul that I can use to make a weapon. Pixie, who happens to be there, is like, I'll do it, it's fine. So Magic takes a piece of her soul, uses it to make a soul dagger. So the way Magic has this big giant buster, I mean, the size of the soul sword changes all the time, but recently it's been quite large, which is this big old soul sword. Pixie has a small soul dagger, which she can use to like interrupt magic and psychic things. I'm honestly not 100% sure what the soul dagger does, but like if someone's, you know, being possessed, you stab them with the soul dagger, they turn good again or something. But it is a powerful weapon. You can use it to do a lot of important things. But to get one, your soul becomes somewhat corrupted. And this is demonstrated in the books, and I'm not joking, this is very consistent. Originally, Pixie has just pink hair, but when her soul gets corrupted, she gets black streaks in her hair. She's like the opposite of Rogue, kind of. And when her soul gets corrupted, she gets kind of bad. She's definitely not like evil, but she's definitely not this nice, sweet little girl that she was in the beginning of the story. Like when we met her, a couple years ago, and she was just this naive little kid. She's a little bit edgier, a little bit darker, not that much darker, but just enough that you notice the difference. There are a bunch of stories involving Pixie and Limbo. Pixie goes back to get Ileana, try to get the part of her soul back that Ileana took. That doesn't work. Eventually, I think Ileana steals her, takes her to Limbo, and then the rest of the X-Men come rescue her. They get everybody back. Part of Pixie's soul is restored. I think this was not the part that was used to make the soul dagger. This was used to make a bloodstone or something like that. So now she gets that back. So she has more of her soul back. I think she always has the dagger. Like from now on, that's going to be something she just has. And this is the point where the X-Men are a very small group of people. Like there's 20 of them. And she, because she is a mutant with powers at this moment, graduates to being an X-Men pretty quickly. Even though she's not incredibly skilled, although her experiences in Limbo do make her much stronger. So what does Pixie bring to the X-Men? She can fly, she can cause hallucinations, make you see things, and she can teleport. Now, this is not a power of Pixie's. This is a spell that magic taught Pixie while they were in Limbo. Pixie has some sort of magical aptitude. It's not super clear at the time why that is. We will learn later that she is part actual Pixie, or like the fairy race that exists in Marvel Comics that is just like little magical creature guys. She is part of that. Obviously the other part is mutant. So some of her powers: flying around, doing the pixie dust, mutant powers. Teleportation, this spell she uses, not a mutant power, a magic spell that she's able to use. Now, that is 90% of what Pixie does in a given X book. She becomes the team's teleporter. And anyway, this is her Azeroth Metrion Synthos, that one phrase that Raven uses to do all of her magic. She just repeats this phrase and she is able to teleport herself and other people. She can do it while she's moving. She can teleport very far. She's a good teleporter. Like, she's better than Nightcrawler. She's not like a more skilled fighter. She doesn't have as much experience as Nightcrawler generally, but in terms of the limitations of their teleportation, Pixie way better. So here's her phrase. It's Sinal Novarum Shinoth. Now, I have a feeling that's said with some sort of accent or something. Pixie uses this to teleport. And she joins like the X-Men. She's not on like a small team of kids because, like I said, she's part of the Academy X group, which is this, I don't know, 5th generation X-Men team. I'm sure there's ones I'm forgetting, but you could kind of chart the X-Men like this. You have the first class of mutants, Scotchy and all those guys. Then you have the 2nd generation of mutants, Wolverine, Storm, Nightcrawler, Colossus, all those guys. Same time, you have the new mutants. Obviously, this is Ileana eventually, but it's like Danny Moonstar, Sunspot, Cannonball. There's a little bit of time passes, then you get Generation X. This is Jubilee, this is Monet, this is Husk. I have a feeling there's one generation between Generation X and Academy X, but Academy X is like the one from the 2000s. So she is still very much a child, but going on missions with Storm and Colossus and Domino and doing real X-Men stuff. Part of it is because there's not a lot of mutants that can help, and part of it is because her teleportation power is so useful. But again, that's most of what she's doing, flying and teleporting. She's not doing too much pixie dust stuff. She's not doing too much soul dagger stuff. Attitude-wise, she's nice, friendly. Everybody seems to like her that she works with. She has a couple of friends her age, the other Academy X girls like Mercury and Dust, and in fact, they're part of what is definitely her best comic. Although I do think that original Academy X run is fun. There's a comic that came out in 2009 called Pixie Strikes Back by Catherine Immonen, Sarah Pichelli, Christina Strain, and David Sharp. And I don't want to totally spoil it. It deals with the characters Pixie, Laura, Armor, Mercury, and Blindfold. That's right, Dust is not in this one. I think she is, though. I think she eventually becomes part of it. But those are like the core friend group of this. And it's just this fun series that takes place in high school, but oh, something is amiss and not everything is what it seems. It's a 4-issue, so it's very easy to get through. You don't need to know too much stuff, although it helps to know that Pixie has been involved in all this limbo nonsense with magic, and that's like a part of her story. But besides that, it's a very accessible book. I think it's a lot of fun. It's got an interesting vibe. You start reading it, you're like, what's going on here? It does get resolved eventually. You figure out what it is. But it's a lot of fun. I would say Pixie Strikes Back is probably my favorite Pixie story. And it's got to be pretty much everybody's favorite Pixie story. One of the other significant things she did, Pixie started dating a member of the Lights, a member of the team of mutants that follows around Hope Summers, almost like her acolytes. I get it now. I didn't see, but now I get it. Acolytes. The Lights, these different mutants that Hope is able to help, cure because their powers are going nuts. She can help them. And also they're some of the first mutants born since the decimation. Pixie is not one of those mutants. She had her powers long before that. But after one member of the Lights leaves, Pixie joins on. So she's part of this team as well. She hangs out with Hope a lot and Velocidad and the other Lights. Besides that, I wouldn't say she's had too many significant comic appearances or things she has done. Like I said, every so often she'll show up in a book, fight some demons or something. I think she had to go back to Wales to fight some demons at one point. She hangs around with Nightcrawler in the Legion of X book, and I think it's a very interesting concept for a book. This is when the X-Men can just die and then come back, and it's like a zero effort thing that nobody really worries about. Pixie's one of the few characters that's like, you know what, I never died. I mean, obviously all this stuff happened to her and she went to limbo, but like she was never fully dead and resurrected. So she's like, I should die and then I could be resurrected. Wouldn't that be cool? And Nightcrawler's like, that is actually pretty messed up. We gotta figure out how we deal with that as a people, because like obviously this is something we can all do. We can all get resurrected by the Five on Krakoa. It's all great, but like, is this okay with God? And what is this gonna do to our morality, the way we think about deaths? It's interesting. She's a member of that crew. Pixie's never been in a movie. I don't think she's been in a show. There are a couple other mutants that are teleporters that I sometimes confuse. The real one is Blink. Blink is a character from, I believe, the Age of Apocalypse timeline. She is also pink, and she also does teleporting. She was the character in X-Men Days of Future Past who was throwing out big portals. That was Blink. This is a different pink character who does teleporting. But there are a couple of characters on the X-Men who do teleporting. Besides Nightcrawler, you've got Pixie, you got Blink, you got Manifold. It's something that a lot of characters can do. And it's a really useful power to have. So of course you would want, a good teleporter on every team, the same way you want a good psychic on every team. So Pixie was introduced in Marvel Snap in the March Avengers vs. X-Men season. She was the first card introduced in the Spotlight rotations. She is a 2-cost, 1 power with the unreveal ability to shuffle the costs of all cards in your deck that started there. So this is a wild power. Like compared to like Cannonball fits into the move meta. He's good for countering Blob, but Pixie should, the same way Mr. Negative did, just create her own kind of deck. You play a Pixie deck with, I don't know, a couple of very high cost cards and a bunch of low cost cards. So when the shuffling happens, you get a really low cost Magneto or something like that. Or, other stuff. I don't know. Pixie is so new. I don't think anybody has fully figured out what to do with her yet, if she's any good at all. I obviously got her because she seems fun. She seems like a fun card. And I like Pixie and I get all the X-Men. That's my rule, which has proven really good. Like there's a lot of X-Men who have come out, or X-Men adjacent characters, I'll say, who people have like slept on, and then later it's like, no, Gladiator's actually a really good card. You should have them. And it's like, oh, good, and I got Gladiator. In the video explaining this is a 1 card from this season that I don't love. The way Ben Brode explained it is like, well, Pixie can do all sorts of magic, so she can change all the cards' costs in your deck or whatever. I think that's fine, but I don't think that's a great explanation of what Pixie actually does. Like I said, she uses magic very, very, not like sparingly, because she uses it a lot, but she only does a couple of things. Like she'll do teleporting all the time, and then every so often she'll learn a new spell. I believe Doctor Strange told her, he's like, I will train you in magic when you get older, and either he just forgot, or maybe he died, because he did die at least once in the last 5-10 years. Or she technically has not aged past 18 because of this weird sliding skill that comics is on. But like, so Pixie doesn't do a lot of magic. And this power, changing the costs and power, like that is huge for a card. Like that is something that if we're kind of scaling these characters to what they can do, and like based on the card, like there's characters like Galactus where it's like what he does is destroys lanes, full lanes. That is a big deal. And Galactus in the comics is a big deal character. Whereas Pixie, it's like, she's okay. She's definitely not the strongest magic user. She's also not like really known for reality warping. I would say if I had to pick a an X-Men card, because let's say this is the Avengers X-Men season, you want 2 Avengers, 2 X-Men added in the spotlight caches, so not counting Hope, obviously. I would say what she's doing fits very well into what a character called Proteus does. Proteus is the son of Moira McTaggart, and he is a reality warper. His like skin is purpley silvery, because there's characters like Legion where like, that's a weird little dude over there, look at his haircut, that guy's up to something. And then like Proteus, you're like, that's a god walking among us. And he's another character who is part of the 5, not the 5 lights, but the 5, like the 5 who resurrect everyone, which includes Hope. So like it would make sense to introduce Proteus in this season so that he could also work with Hope. Now they wouldn't work well together, but just in general, in terms of like characters that can warp reality and that do interact with the X-Men, besides like, you know, some characters that are Excalibur adjacent characters like Jamie Braddock, Mad Jim Jaspers, honestly, a lot of the Excalibur characters, you could have Saturnine do this if you ever wanted to make a Saturnine card, but instead you gave it to Pixie. And listen, Pixie's a very popular character, a lot of people like her. I am a fan. I think she's a character that they should do like in the movies or shows or something like that pretty soon. Like, I think she would be a great POV character if we started with some X-Men being older and 1 or 2 younger characters that were like following around. So, like, let's say Jubilee is in her 20s, Pixie 14 or whatever, and she's like the you know, Rogue of this series. Same way that Rogue in the original X-Men movies was kind of the POV character, although the movies just kind of forgot about that. See, I would say this is the one this season that I don't think they fully got right. It's not because she doesn't do magic. It's not because she's not a cool character. It's just because she does not do the kind of magic that would facilitate this kind of card effect, that would make its own deck. Like that is so different from all the other cards. I figure we want to give this to a reality warper. You give it to someone like Wanda if she didn't already have a power, or Legion. But, you know, I mean, there's worse things than having to introduce people who don't know about Pixie to Pixie. Reading recommendations, if you want to learn about Pixie, the new X-Men from 2004, it's a fun book. You start it and she's not in it for a while, and even when she is in it, you just kind of see her and you go, oh, I guess that's Pixie. Eventually she becomes important, but then Pixie strikes back, you know, 4 issues. I would say read a little bit of her Wikipedia page if you want to get refreshed, and then go into this book. That way you'll know kind of who these characters are and what their deals are. But that's a really fun book. Like, I think Marvel should make more books like Pixie Strikes Back, because that is the kind of thing that I think they, especially with the X-Men, they could do. And I think get people excited for some of these characters that don't have a huge, you know, presence outside of the comics, right? Because like, to focus on a character like that takes a lot of work. If she shows up in the movies, she gets very popular, then oh, she's all over the comics. That's always how that goes. But a good way to introduce her in a comic is say, here's a 4-issue Pixie series. It's really weird. People are going to like it. And then you throw that out there. So I don't know. I wish Marvel made more of these, honestly. And I think they've done that a little bit in the Krakoan era with stuff like Fallen Angels. I mean, X-Corp wasn't envisioned as this way, but it was a short series. But like, I think, yeah, I think you could do more stuff like that. That I think would be fun. So if you enjoyed this video, share it with whoever you play Marvel Snap with on all the Marvel forums and subreddits and all that stuff. And Marvel Snap, obviously, those places. Make sure people that like Marvel Snap, that maybe want to learn more about comics, and they don't even have to play Marvel Snap. They can just have heard the name Pixie before, but like, I don't know who that is. They can watch this video and enjoy it. And then I will keep doing more of these. I have plans to do all the rest of the cards that are coming out this month at least, obviously. So you got Cannonball, Mockingbird, and War Machine. Those are gonna be interesting because those are characters like, you know, Pixie and Hope are characters that have not existed for more than 20 years. War Machine is quite old. Mockingbird is quite old. Cannonball is quite old. So they have a lot of history, and those should be interesting. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Watch my other videos on Nando V Movies, and I'll see you next time.